This could be one of the simplest firewood rack designs out there, and it's expandable. All you need is a few basic materials. Before we start building these racks, let me tell you the story of how we acquired all this wood. After recently purchasing this home built in the 70s, landscaping was one of the first projects we tackled, specifically cleaning up these hackberry trees off the property. For whatever reason, the prior owners let these hackberries grow through the fence of all places. What a mess. Not sure if you're familiar with these types of trees, but they are unpleasantly persistent. These trees also excrete a honeydew from their leaves, which cakes onto anything below. Not an ideal tree to have next to a driveway. This honeydew also attracts heaps of aphids, which you can see scatter as we fell this tree. Here's a shot of the backyard just a few months after cutting down some of those hackberries. You can see 7 saplings just in this frame. I swear, hackberries are like the weed of trees. Soon after landscaping, we replaced the old brick fireplace with a modern, highly efficient fire insert. This thing can heat a majority of the home, so we know we wanted to keep a lot of this wood. For this rack design, all you really need is boards and some cinder blocks. We will be reclaiming the wood from this neglected deck in the backyard to use for the rack. But first, we will need to remove this broken hot tub. Like a lot of things on this property, this hot tub was not properly maintained. Check out this swamp water. The only babies being made in this hot tub are mosquitoes. Believe it or not, after cleaning this thing up a little bit, we were able to sell this thing on the interweb for a quick buck. Selling this thing was easy, moving it was not. However, with a dolly and a few pieces of plywood, we were able to shuffle this thing across the yard to the driveway. Only if this thing was a hot tub time machine. Then we can go back and slap the previous owners and tell them not to let those hackberries settle in. Like seriously, how hard is this? We probably could have salvaged this deck, but there were some projects like replacing the septic tank with a sewer line where the location of the deck would have been a problem. Also, we have projects like this firewood rack that would make great use of these boards. Pretty sure this deck had never been slapped with some stain, so we will be sanding the boards to prep them for a little coat of something. Also, these boards are closer to 5 inches in width rather than 5.5 for a normal 2x6. Next, we'll cut one of these 12-foot boards into 1-foot sections to act as bracing for the base and the sides of the rack. In total, we will have 9 pieces for the cross bracing to make this 12-foot long rack. Keep in mind, you can also use 2x4s or any size board as long as the side pieces can fit into the cinder blocks. For the sides, we'll need 4 4-foot pieces. Since they will sit at an angle inside the cinder blocks, the total height of the rack will be about 3.5 feet. We did end up hitting a couple fasteners in those boards that we missed during disassembly. Though we were using a saw blade designed to cut through nails, these were screws, which tend to be harder than nails. The saw blade did end up with a couple chips, although we were able to finish out the project with the same blade. We gathered up a few blocks lying around the property, however we realized that some of the blocks had different sized openings and our deck boards would not fit. Though we can use these blocks for supports, we did have to buy blocks for the ends of the rack that have rectangular openings. Before we assemble everything, we're going to slap some stain on these boards. These boards have lived a long, neglected life. Figured we could have them looking sharp in their new one. If you were to buy new lumber, use treated wood. Though it is not necessary to stain treated wood, our boards are a number of years old and very dry. After staining, we'll use just a handful of screws to assemble everything together. And we'll also be sure to pre-drill before screwing so we don't crack the boards. After screwing together the base, we made our 2 end pieces. These will end up sitting in the cinder blocks, so they will need to be about 2 inches apart. This will also match the spacing of our base. We also cut the ends of the base at a matching angle to the sides of the rack. Now for its final resting place. We have a long stretch of driveway that is perfect for this style of rack and will allow us to add sections in the future. Now, why not make the rack taller? Well, you certainly could, but the higher you go, the more unstable the rack tends to be. Though we have not had a problem in the past with these types of racks tipping over, I wouldn't make this rack much taller than this. For those that want to forego screwing in 80 screws, towards the end of the video, we will show you how to make the same rack design without tools. And we'll even show you a rack design using only 2x4s. A lot of the wood that we are stacking is unsplit, which will take longer to season. However, right now we have too much wood and not enough time, so we are just stacking for now and will likely end up getting a wood splitter in the near future. One of the best things about this rack design is you can always add sections to expand it. So after felling yet another hackberry, we needed to expand this rack. Expanding the rack is relatively easy. First, we will remove the wood and side from one end of the rack. Then we will shift the cinder block over to make room for the new base. We will also add a few more cinder blocks. This should get us another 12 feet of rack for a total of 24 feet. I think this should do it for now until we cut down another hackberry. Another thing to note, a rack with a 12-foot long base and 4-foot long end pieces should provide more than enough room for a third of a cord of wood. This is also called a face cord or a rick, depending on where you are from. So the first design is probably overkill, but the simplified version takes less than 30 seconds to put together, and that wouldn't make for a good video. We don't live in an extremely cold climate, so this wood will likely last us a few years. We also intend to cover the top of the wood stack with a tarp to shed water if it rains. For those of you that want to skip all that screwing, here's how to make the rack with minimal steps and no tools. Though there is no bracing on this version, the cinder blocks should provide plenty of support. If you are buying new lumber, most supply stores should be able to make the cuts for the end pieces. The weight from the wood should secure the rack, but to be safe, I wouldn't put this rack near anything you love. With the 2x4 version, you could stand the boards upright, which should provide more strength to the rack, versus laying the boards wide side down. However, if you choose to stand them on their edge, they do have a tendency to tip over when you stack the wood. A couple screws through the base and end piece should prevent the base pieces from tipping over. And there you have it. 3 different versions of the cinder block rack. Racks on racks on racks. Let me know how you stack your wood. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing to see more content like this.